Alright, so in the previous lesson, we finished refining the line work for our fifth and final character, and we're ready to go ahead and begin with color. Now, I'm not going to go through the process of coloring each and every one of these characters. That process would actually get a little bit redundant. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is show you a technique called cell shading. Cell shading is a really simple way to apply color and values to a character, and it really suits the style that we've been working in. This whimsical, this cartoony style suits it very, very well. So let's just go ahead and choose a character. I want to work on this little old man right here, and you can see here that I've already worked up a few color swatches here and just mixed them and painted them out to the side. So we've got kind of a color palette for him already established. Now, the first step in this process is going to be to go ahead and drop flat colors in on our character. So, if you see here, I've gone ahead and made a new a new layer in our color folder for this character, and just titled it Color. So, I want to go ahead and grab my paintbrush here, and let's go ahead and take a look at what this paintbrush looks like. I'm just going to go ahead and paint out here to the side. Let me shrink that down a little bit, and you can kind of see what's going on here. So you can see here, the harder I'm pressing on my tablet, the darker this is getting. Let me go ahead and show you what's causing that over here in the brush settings. If we look under Transfer, we can see that our opacity jitter is set to pin pressure. That's going to essentially vary the opacity based on how hard I'm pressing down my pen. And you know what? In order to do flat color, it's not going to really work too well with that opacity jitter turned on. So let's go ahead and turn off the transfer for right now. That way we can paint and get one solid dark opacity. And let's go ahead and sample some of these skin colors. We'll work on those first. So, I've got a variety of different shades of skin color here. And I'm just going to go ahead and choose one of these. I'll choose this second one right here. With my brush tool selected, I went ahead and held down the Alt key to hot switch over to my eyedropper tool and just sampled one of those colors. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is just paint in a really quick, fast layer of this flesh tone. And I'm not really paying attention to where I'm laying it as far as, am I getting it inside the lines? Am I getting it outside the lines? Am I coloring things that shouldn't be colored this color? Because we're going to come back in and clean this up here in just a moment. But we're just looking to lay down a really quick layer of color here. And you can see that we're just making sure that every part of his flesh is covered with this color, and you can see I've gone outside the lines in a few places, and we've obviously colored his eyes and his eyebrows, and those aren't going to be flesh colored, but for just the pure speed aspect of this, it's faster to just go ahead and paint these in and then come back in and erase away and clean up later. So once we've finished with all of our flat colors, now that we've gone ahead and painted in his flesh tones, let's go ahead and choose a different color here. Let's go ahead and choose maybe his beard color. I've got a brown here that I've gone ahead and selected. I'm just going to quickly paint that in, just like so. Again, we've turned that opacity jitter off, so we're just painting in a solid 100% opacity of this color here. Now, as I get around sort of the areas where his beard is a little bit jagged, it's going to get a little harder to get the details, but again, there's going to be a little bit of cleanup involved in laying down the flat color, and it's entirely possible we'll just come in and repaint those in just a moment with a smaller brush anyways. So right now we're just looking to get, like I said, a quick layer of color down. Let me just increase the size of my brush so we get a little bit more coverage. Alright, looking pretty good. We've almost got that done. And just kind of coming in here and hitting these little jagged edges right in here. Alright, looking good. Let's go ahead and hit his eyebrows next. Obviously those are going to be the same color as his beard, or at least I hope they would be. Alright, looking really good. Come over and hit this second eyebrow, and let's go ahead and grab a color for his suit. I've got this kind of this bluish gray color right here. We're going to work based on it here. So I'm just choosing fairly good medium value colors, and I'm not choosing super light colors for the most part, and I'm not choosing super dark colors to come in with my flat color. I think that all can be established once we get into shadows, but you can see there is kind of a spectrum. This blue or this this gray here is obviously much lighter than this brown. So depending on the color suit you think this gentleman should be wearing, think about the shadows that are going to be cast on it, and think about the highlights, and try and pick a nice medium between those. So I'm just coming in and painting it this light gray color for right now. And getting a little bit close to his beard. We're going to have a little cleanup in there. That's okay. So this is really not unlike using a coloring book. If you don't mind the analogy, I think that We've created the line work, we've drawn the character. Now we're just coming in and filling in the basic flat colors. But, you know, really using this cell shading process is so much more than just flat color, because we're going to add shadows and eventually highlights to this character that's really going to give it a three-dimensional form. Now, what I just did there was I went in and painted in his eyes with white, and I switched to that. It was my background color, and I switched to that by hitting X on my keyboard. So hitting X, you can cycle between those two colors. I've got a color picked out here for his tie. Let's go ahead and quickly paint that in. And just hit that tie really quickly. Looks like we might have missed a spot with his flesh tone there in between the collars of his shirt. We'll just come in and sample that and then paint that in really quickly here. Alright, so let's go ahead and use a very similar color to this blue, maybe a little more desaturated, for his eyes. Just quickly come in and paint that in. Alright, so we've got color coverage over the most part of this character. Now, I'm going to go ahead and leave his shirt white for right now, but you can see here, obviously we did this very, very quickly, and there's a lot of areas where the color isn't applied the way it should be. So now at this point, I'm just going to come in, quickly clean this up, looking for little areas where, you know, maybe I got a little messy with the color. Cycling between my eraser tool using the E keyboard shortcut, and switching back to my brush using the B keyboard shortcut. Looks like we got a little messy with the brown there. And clean that up there. And the reason I like to clean this up before I go any further is because we're going to actually use basically a selection of these pixels that we've essentially established by painting them with flat colors. We're going to use that in the next step as we begin to apply shadows to our character. So I like to go ahead and clean it up, like I said, at this point, and make sure that we only have color filling the pixels that we're actually going to utilize, because if it's outside those pixels, when we get to the next point, it's just going to create an additional level of work for us as far as cleanup goes within the shadows and the highlights. And, you know, depending on how deep your shadows are, how many levels of shadows you're working with, then, you know, you may have quite a bit more cleanup. So I do that here now just to solve that problem for future, just cleaning up in the future. So just quickly coming along here, let's go ahead and clean up the tips of his beard down here. This beard got a little detailed on us, and, you know, maybe we added a little bit too much detail to it, but you know, I think that's just a matter of personal preference when it comes to drawing in this style, or drawing in a cartoony or stylized type of character. I think that my own personal preference is that I will actually err on the side of more details rather than less. So now you may actually be the exact opposite of that. You may actually err on the side of less details. So, you know, I just think that's a personal thing. Each person's probably a little bit different when it comes to that. Alright, our character's looking pretty good here. May come in and get a little bit more of this light gray a little bit further down here. Really doesn't matter how much information we have down here. We're not doing the entire character right now anyway. So we've pretty much cleaned this up, and we've prepared it for shadows. So in the next lesson, we're going to pick up where we're leaving off here, and we're going to push this flat color to the next level by creating shadows.